The distant wail of a train whistle pierced the dusty air of Silver Creek as Cassandra Mitchell's fingers clutched the worn edges of her father's gambling marker, her heart sinking with the knowledge that by sundown, she would no longer belong to herself. The year was 1875, and in the unforgiving landscape of the Arizona Territory, a woman without means was little more than currency to be traded. "Pa, you can't do this," Cassandra pleaded, her voice barely audible above the creaking floorboards of their modest cabin. "I'm your daughter, not a piece of property." Jeremiah Mitchell wouldn't meet her gaze, his weathered face a portrait of shame and defeat. "Ain't got no choice, girl. Blackwood's calling in his debts. Either you go to work for him or we both end up in unmarked graves." "Work for him?" Cassandra's voice cracked. "We both know what kind of work he expects from women." Her father's silence confirmed her worst fears. Gerald Blackwood owned half the businesses in Silver Creek, including the Painted Lady Saloon, where women danced for men's amusement and offered other services behind closed doors. Blackwood had been eyeing Cassandra since she'd turned 18 last spring, and her father's gambling habit had finally given him the opportunity he'd been waiting for. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cabin as Cassandra packed her meager belongings. Her mother's cameo brooch, a tattered copy of Pride and Prejudice, and a change of clothes were all she had to her name. She changed into her only good dress, a faded blue cotton that had once belonged to her mother before consumption had taken her 3 winters ago. "Time to go," her father announced from the doorway, his voice hollow. The walk to town felt like a funeral procession. Cassandra held her head high despite the curious stares from townsfolk who'd already heard the gossip. In a town like Silver Creek, news traveled faster than dust in a windstorm. Blackwood was waiting outside the saloon, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the dusty surroundings. At 45, his dark hair was streaked with silver, and a meticulously trimmed mustache framed his thin lips. His eyes, cold as a winter creek, assessed Cassandra as one might appraise livestock. "Ah, the lovely Miss Mitchell," he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Right on time, Mr. Blackwood," her father began, "about our arrangement." "The arrangement stands," Blackwood interrupted, extending a hand containing several folded bills. $500 settles your debt, Mitchell. Your daughter's contract is for 1 year of service." Cassandra watched as her father hesitated briefly before taking the money. Something inside her shattered as he pocketed the bills without counting them. "I'm sorry, Cassie," he whispered, not meeting her eyes. "Go get yourself cleaned up," Blackwood instructed Cassandra, gripping her elbow. "Mrs. Holloway will show you to your quarters." As her father turned and walked away, Cassandra called after him, "Is this what Ma would have wanted?" He paused momentarily, but didn't look back. Mrs. Holloway was a stern-faced woman with iron gray hair pulled into a tight bun. She led Cassandra to a small room at the back of the saloon, barely large enough for a narrow bed and washstand. "You'll share with Ruby when she returns," Mrs. Holloway explained. "Mr. Blackwood expects you to start tonight. You'll serve drinks until you learn the dances. And after that?" Cassandra asked, though she already knew the answer. Mrs. Holloway's expression softened briefly. "Just do as you're told, girl. Makes it easier that way." Left alone, Cassandra sank onto the thin mattress and finally allowed her tears to fall. She'd heard stories of women sold to settle debts, but never imagined she'd become one of them. As darkness fell, the sounds of the saloon came to life: piano music, raucous laughter, and the clink of glasses. Her new life awaited, the red satin dress Mrs. Holloway provided was scandalously low-cut, revealing more of Cassandra's pale skin than she'd ever shown in public. Her honey blonde hair, usually pinned modestly, had been loosened to fall in waves past her shoulders. "Perfect," Blackwood declared when she emerged. "You'll fetch a high price once you're trained up properly." The saloon was crowded with cowboys, miners, and travelers' men whose eyes followed Cassandra as she awkwardly carried trays of whiskey to the tables. Their hands found reasons to brush against hers, and their comments made her cheeks burn with humiliation. "Smile, darling," Blackwood hissed as he passed. "Your merchandise now." Near midnight, the saloon doors swung open, admitting a tall figure silhouetted against the night sky. The piano music faltered momentarily as several patrons glanced toward the newcomer with wary expressions. He moved with the quiet confidence of a mountain lion, deliberate and watchful. Dust from the trail coated his clothes, but there was something in his bearing that set him apart from the usual drifters. He removed his hat, revealing sun-bronzed features and eyes the color of a summer storm. A thin scar traced from his right temple to his jawline, speaking of past violence. "Whiskey," he requested as he approached the bar, his voice deep and measured. Cassandra delivered his drink, trying to avoid eye contact. "You're new," he observed quietly. "First day," she replied, attempting the practiced smile Mrs. Holloway had instructed her to use. He studied her for a moment, and not by choice, I'd wager. Before she could respond, Blackwood appeared beside her. "Mr. Alexander Kincaid," he greeted the stranger. "I heard you were back in these parts. What brings you to Silver Creek?" "Just passing through," Kincaid answered, his gaze still on Cassandra. "Well, while you're here, perhaps you'd be interested in some entertainment." Blackwood's hand settled possessively on Cassandra's shoulder. "This one's new, but promising." Kincaid's expression hardened. "I'm just here for the whiskey, Blackwood. Suit yourself." Blackwood's fingers dug painfully into Cassandra's skin. "Back to work, girl." As the night wore on, Cassandra became aware that Kincaid was watching her not with the leering interest of the other patrons, but with something resembling concern. When a drunken miner grabbed her waist and pulled her onto his lap, Kincaid was suddenly there, his hand on the man's wrist. "The lady's trying to work," he said quietly, but with unmistakable authority. The miner released her immediately. "Didn't mean nothing by it, Kincaid." Later, as Cassandra cleared empty glasses from a table near where Kincaid sat, she whispered, "Thank you." He nodded slightly. "How did you end up here? My father's gambling debts." "Blackwood bought your contract." $500, she confirmed bitterly. "Apparently that's my value." A muscle tightened in Kincaid's jaw. "No one should be bought or sold, Miss Mitchell, Cassandra Mitchell." "Miss Mitchell." He tipped his hat slightly. "Alexander Kincaid." Their conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Holloway summoning Cassandra to the kitchen. When she returned, Kincaid was gone, but he'd left something on the table, a small, folded piece of paper. She pocketed it quickly, waiting until she had a private moment to read the hastily scrawled message. "North side of building. Midnight tomorrow." That night, sharing the narrow bed with Ruby, a world-weary girl barely older than herself, Cassandra clutched the note like a talisman. She knew nothing about Alexander Kincaid, except that he seemed different from the other men who frequented the Painted Lady. It might be foolish to trust a stranger, but desperation had a way of reshaping one's judgment. The next day passed in a blur of chores and instruction. Mrs. Holloway demonstrated the simple dance steps Cassandra would be expected to perform on stage within the week. Blackwood made it clear that, after a suitable breaking-in period, she would be expected to entertain clients privately. "You'll thank me eventually," he told her when she protested. "A woman alone has few options in this world. I'm offering you protection." "You're offering slavery," she retorted. His hand struck her cheek with enough force to knock her against the wall. "That spirit will earn you extra customers," he said coldly. "But it will break, just like all the others." As midnight approached, Cassandra's heart raced with both fear and hope. She had managed to slip away during a busy moment when the saloon was crowded with miners celebrating a new silver strike. The cool night air was a blessed relief after the smoky interior. She made her way cautiously to the north side of the building, staying in the shadows. For several agonizing minutes, she waited, wondering if she'd misunderstood or been made the victim of a cruel joke. Then a figure emerged from the darkness. "Miss Mitchell." "Mr. Kincaid," she acknowledged, her voice barely audible. Call me Alex, he said, leading her further from the saloon. We don't have much time. Blackwood's men will notice you're missing soon enough. Why are you helping me? His expression was grave in the moonlight. I've seen what happens to women in places like the Painted Lady. No one deserves that fate, especially not someone who was sold into it against their will. A horse waited nearby, a sturdy palomino with a patient demeanor. I can get you out of Silver Creek tonight, Alex explained. I have contacts in Tucson who can help you find legitimate work. Cassandra hesitated. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because I've spent too many years turning a blind eye to injustice, he answered simply. Will you come? The decision should have been difficult, trusting an unknown man versus remaining in Blackwood's clutches, but Cassandra found herself nodding. Yes, he helped her mount the horse and was about to swing up behind her when a voice called out from the darkness. Well, what have we here? Blackwood emerged from the shadows, flanked by two of his men. All three held revolvers. Kincaid, I always suspected you were soft-hearted beneath that gunslinger reputation, Blackwood said, his tone conversational. But stealing my property, that's just bad business. She's not property, Blackwood, Alex replied evenly, his hand hovering near his own weapon. She's a human being. She's merchandise I paid good money for, Blackwood countered, and I don't take kindly to theft. Mr. Blackwood, please, Cassandra began, but fell silent when one of the men raised his gun toward her. Get down from that horse, girl, Blackwood ordered, unless you want to watch Kincaid die right here. Alex's voice was low and steady. Run, Cassandra, but they'll go. In one fluid motion, Alex drew his revolver and fired, the shot catching one of Blackwood's men in the shoulder. Chaos erupted. Cassandra clung to the horse's mane as it bolted forward, startled by the gunfire. Behind her, more shots rang out, and she heard shouts and the sound of a struggle. The horse galloped away from town, and Cassandra, having little experience with riding, could do nothing but hold on desperately. Eventually, the horse slowed to a trot, then stopped entirely to graze on a patch of desert scrub. Cassandra slid from its back, her legs trembling. In the distance, Silver Creek was a cluster of lights against the vast darkness of the desert night. She had no idea what had happened to Alex Kincaid, but the continuing absence of pursuit suggested he might have at least delayed Blackwood's men. With no other options, she took the horse's reins and began walking, guided only by the stars and the vague recollection that Tucson lay to the southwest. The desert night was cold, and her thin dress offered little protection against the chill. The horse, at least, seemed content to follow her lead. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the landscape in hues of gold and pink, Cassandra spotted a plume of smoke rising in the distance. Hope and caution warred within her as she changed direction slightly, heading toward what might be a ranch or homestead. The sun was fully risen when she crested a small ridge and saw the source of the smoke, a modest ranch house with several outbuildings and corrals containing horses and cattle. A ranch hand spotted her approach and called out to someone inside the house. A woman emerged, shading her eyes against the morning glare. As Cassandra drew closer, she saw that the woman was perhaps 50, with streaks of gray in her dark hair and the weathered complexion of someone who had spent decades under the southwestern sun. Good morning, the woman called. You look like you've had quite a journey. Cassandra realized what a sight she must be disheveled, wearing a saloon girl's dress, leading a horse through the desert at dawn. I'm afraid I'm lost, she admitted. Well, you've found the Circle K Ranch, the woman replied. I'm Martha Kincaid. Cassandra's heart skipped. Kincaid. Are you related to Alexander Kincaid? Martha's expression sharpened with interest. Alex is my son. Do you know him? He helped me escape from Silver Creek last night, Cassandra explained, her voice catching. But there was trouble. Mr. Blackwood and his men caught us. Alex told me to run, and there was shooting. Martha's face paled slightly, but her voice remained steady. Come inside, child. You look dead on your feet. We'll sort this out. The ranch house was comfortably furnished with handmade quilts and sturdy wooden furniture. Martha provided Cassandra with clean clothes, a simple cotton dress that had belonged to her daughter, who was now married and living in California. Over a breakfast of eggs, biscuits, and coffee, Cassandra explained her situation: her father's gambling, Blackwood's purchase of her contract, and Alex's intervention. "That sounds like my Alex," Martha sighed, "always fighting other people's battles." She studied Cassandra thoughtfully. "He must have seen something special in you to take such a risk." "I'm afraid he may have been hurt because of me," Cassandra confessed. "Or worse." "My son is capable of taking care of himself," Martha assured her, though concern shadowed her eyes. "He's been riding these territories since he was 16, and he's now 32 with plenty of experience behind him." "What will happen now?" Cassandra asked. "Mr. Blackwood will be looking for me." "You'll stay here until we hear from Alex," Martha decided. "The Circle K has protected its own for 20 years, and we're not about to stop now." The next few days passed in a blur of activity as Cassandra adjusted to life on the ranch. Martha put her to work immediately, saying idle hands only led to worry. Cassandra learned to collect eggs, churn butter, and help with the endless tasks that kept a working ranch functioning. The ranch hands were respectful but curious about her presence. From their whispered conversations, Cassandra gathered that Alex Kincaid had quite a reputation in the territory: former Army scout, occasional lawman, and a man known for standing up against the corrupt forces that often held sway in frontier towns. On the fourth day, as Cassandra was hanging laundry to dry in the hot desert air, she heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Her heart hammered as she turned to see a rider approaching from the east. Even at a distance, she recognized the straight-backed posture and broad shoulders. Relief flooded through her as Alex Kincaid rode into the ranch yard, dusty but very much alive. Martha emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Alexander James Kincaid, you had us worried half to death." He dismounted smoothly, removing his hat as he approached his mother. "Sorry, Ma. Had to take a roundabout route to make sure I wasn't followed." His eyes found Cassandra over his mother's shoulder as he embraced the older woman. "Miss Mitchell, I'm glad to see you made it safely." "Thanks to you," she replied, suddenly conscious of her work-worn appearance. "I feared the worst when I heard the gunfire." "Blackwood's men aren't particularly good shots," Alex said with a slight smile, "though I can't say the same for their employer." Martha pulled back to examine her son more closely, her expression sharpening as she noticed the way he favored his left side. "You're hurt. It's nothing serious," he assured her. "Bullet grazed my ribs. I had it tended to in Prescott." "Inside," Martha ordered. "I want to see it for myself." As they entered the house, Alex explained what had happened after Cassandra's escape. "Blackwood's men were more interested in chasing you than dealing with me. I managed to disable 2 of them, but Blackwood got off a lucky shot before I could reach my horse." "And now?" Cassandra asked anxiously. "Will he come looking for me here?" Alex exchanged a glance with his mother. "Blackwood's influence doesn't extend much beyond Silver Creek, but he's not a man who forgives easily. He'll be looking, yes." Martha's expression was resolute. "Let him look." The Circle K has weathered Apache raids and land disputes with bigger operations than Gerald Blackwood's saloon. "We can handle one disgruntled businessman." After examining and rebandaging Alex's wound, a long furrow across his ribs that made Cassandra wince in sympathy, Martha announced she was going to prepare a proper welcome home dinner. Left alone with Alex in the comfortable main room of the ranch house, Cassandra found herself suddenly shy. "Your mother has been very kind to me. She's a good judge of character," he replied, studying her with those storm-gray eyes. "And she's always had a soft spot for strays." "Is that what I am, a stray?" "No," he said quietly. "You're someone who deserved better than being treated as property." She looked down at her hands, calloused now from ranch work. "Why did you help me, Mr. Kincaid? Truly," he was silent for a long moment. When I was 19, I was working as a deputy in a mining town called Redemption. There was a girl there, not much older than you. She'd been sold to the local brothel by her stepfather. I was new to the job, still believing in justice and doing right. His expression darkened with memory. I promised her I'd help her escape, but I waited too long, tried to do everything by the book. By the time I got the circuit judge to invalidate her contract, she'd taken matters into her own hands. "What happened to her?" Cassandra asked softly. "She hung herself with her bedsheets," Alex said, his voice flat. "Left a note saying she couldn't bear another night of what they made her do." Cassandra reached out impulsively, laying her hand on his. "I'm sorry. I swore then that I'd never stand by again if I could help," he continued. "When I saw you in Blackwood's saloon, with that look in your eyes, determination mixed with fear, I knew I couldn't ride away." "You risked your life for a stranger," she marveled. "I'd like to think someone would do the same for my sister or mother if they were in trouble." He smiled slightly. "Besides, it's not the first time I've crossed Blackwood. We have history." Before Cassandra could ask about this history, Martha called them to dinner. The meal was festive, with ranch hands joining them at the long table. Stories and laughter flowed freely, and for the first time since her father had sold her contract, Cassandra felt something like belonging. As weeks passed, Cassandra settled into life at the Circle K. She learned to ride properly under Alex's patient instruction, to mend fences, and even to shoot a rifle, just in case, Martha insisted. The work was hard but satisfying, and the nightmares about Blackwood and the painted lady gradually became less frequent. Alex often rode out for days at a time on ranch business, or to meet with the local marshal about the increasing problem of cattle rustling in the territory. Cassandra found herself watching the horizon for his return with an eagerness that both thrilled and frightened her. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert in fiery hues, Alex broached the subject that had remained unspoken between them. "You're adapting well to ranch life," he observed. "I enjoy it," she admitted. "Your mother has been teaching me to manage the household accounts. She says I have a good head for figures." "Ma's right about that. She's also right that you've become invaluable around here." He hesitated. "But I've been thinking about your situation. Your father's contract with Blackwood." Cassandra tensed. "What about it?" "Legally, it might still be binding," he explained carefully. "If Blackwood were to find you and involve the territorial authorities, he could claim you're his property for the duration of the contract." "I'd rather die than go back," she said fiercely. "I know, and it won't come to that." His expression was determined. "But I've been thinking we should take steps to invalidate the contract permanently." "How would we do that?" He looked away, suddenly finding great interest in the distant mountains. "There are a few ways. One would be to prove the contract was signed under duress, but that would require your father's testimony, and from what you've told me." "He wouldn't help," Cassandra finished. "He's probably drunk away that money by now and signed a dozen more markers." Alex nodded grimly. "Another option would be to have someone else buy out your contract from Blackwood." "I couldn't ask anyone to pay that man on my behalf," she protested. "Besides, that would just be trading one owner for another." "Not necessarily." He cleared his throat. "If you were married, your husband would have legal precedence over any prior contract involving your labor." Cassandra stared at him, her heart suddenly pounding. "Married? It's just one option," he added quickly. "I don't mean to presume or pressure you. There's also the possibility of traveling further west, perhaps to California, where Blackwood's influence couldn't reach." "Are you?" She struggled to form the question. "Are you offering to marry me, Mr. Kincaid?" He met her gaze directly. "I'm offering you a solution, Miss Mitchell. A legal protection. Nothing more would be expected of you than what you're already doing here on the ranch." Disappointment mingled with relief in her chest. "A marriage of convenience, then?" "Exactly." He nodded, though something flickered in his eyes that suggested the matter wasn't quite so simple for him. You would have the Kincaid name and protection, and in return, you could continue helping with the ranch as you've been doing." "I see." Cassandra looked out at the darkening landscape, considering his proposal. It was practical, logical even, and yet some part of her had hoped for more than practicality. "May I think about it?" "Of course." He rose from his chair. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands regardless." That night, Cassandra lay awake long after the ranch had fallen silent, turning Alex's proposal over in her mind. Marriage had always seemed a distant prospect, something that might happen someday, with someone who loved her. The idea of a marriage based on legal convenience rather than affection felt hollow. And yet, there was something about Alex Kincaid that stirred feelings she'd never experienced before. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle patience with which he taught her to ride, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him, these things had begun to occupy her thoughts with increasing frequency. Morning found her still undecided. She went about her chores mechanically, feeding the chickens and helping Martha prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. "You're quiet this morning," Martha observed as they kneaded dough for the day's bread. "Alex asked me to marry him yesterday," Cassandra blurted out, then immediately blushed at her directness. Martha's hands stilled momentarily, but her expression remained composed. "I see. And what did you tell him?" "That I needed time to think." Cassandra punched down the dough with perhaps more force than necessary. He made it clear it would be a marriage of convenience, for protection from Blackwood. Martha resumed kneading, her experienced hands working the dough with practiced motions. "My son has always been practical to a fault," she said after a moment. "Gets that from his father, never was one to speak what's in his heart." "What do you mean?" The older woman smiled knowingly. "I've raised that boy from birth, Cassandra. I know when he's smitten, even if he won't admit it to himself." She placed a floured hand on Cassandra's arm. "Don't let his talk of convenience fool you. I haven't seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you since he was 20 and sweet on the schoolteacher's daughter." Cassandra's pulse quickened. "You think he has feelings for me?" "I think my son has spent so many years guarding his heart that he's forgotten how to offer it freely," Martha replied, "but that doesn't mean it isn't his to give." Before Cassandra could respond, they heard the sound of riders approaching more than one, and at speed. Martha moved to the window, her expression shifting to one of alarm. "Riders coming in fast," she announced. "4 of them, and they're not our boys." Alex appeared in the doorway, buckling on his gun belt. "Ma, get Miss Mitchell to the root cellar. Now, is it Blackwood?" Cassandra asked, fear tightening her chest. "Can't tell yet, but we're not taking chances." His expression was grim as he checked his revolver. "Go with Ma and stay hidden until I come for you." Martha led Cassandra through the kitchen to a trapdoor concealed beneath a rug. The root cellar was cool and dark, lined with shelves of preserved foods and supplies. Martha handed Cassandra a loaded shotgun before climbing back up the ladder. "I can't leave you alone down here," Cassandra protested. "You can and you will," Martha said firmly. "I was born on frontier land and I'll be damned if I'll hide in my own home. Besides, no one's looking for me." She softened slightly. "Just stay quiet and be ready. If anyone other than Alex or me opens that door, you use that shotgun." Left alone in the dimly lit cellar, Cassandra strained to hear what was happening above. Muffled voices, then the distinctive sound of boots on the porch. She clutched the shotgun, her palms slick with sweat as she remembered Alex's lessons on how to use it. The voices grew louder, men arguing. She recognized Alex's deep tones, then Martha's firm interjections. Another voice joined in, one that sent ice through her veins. Gerald Blackwood. "Know she's here, Kincaid," Blackwood was saying, his voice clearer now as someone had apparently opened a window. $500 I paid for that girl's contract, plus damages for the men you shot." "There's no one here by that name," Alex replied evenly. "And you're trespassing on private property." "I've got the law on my side this time," Blackwood countered. "Marshal, show him the papers." A new voice, authoritative but uncomfortable. Got a writ here from Judge Hollister in Silver Creek, authorizing the recovery of one Cassandra Mitchell, contractually bound to Mr. Blackwood for a term of 1 year. That contract was illegal, Alex argued. She was sold against her will. Contract looks proper to me, the marshal responded. Signed by her father as her legal guardian, unless she's married or can prove coercion, the contract stands. Search the house, Blackwood ordered. Now wait just a minute, Martha interjected. You can't just, Madam, I'm afraid with this writ, they can, the marshal said apologetically. Best to cooperate if you've nothing to hide. Cassandra's heart pounded as she heard footsteps moving through the house above, drawers opening, doors slamming. She gripped the shotgun tighter, wondering if she'd have the courage to use it if discovered. The search seemed to last an eternity. Finally, the footsteps receded, and Blackwood's voice returned, sharp with frustration. She's here somewhere, Kincaid, I know it. You've searched the house, Alex replied calmly. You've found nothing. Now I suggest you leave before I file a complaint about harassment. This isn't over, Blackwood threatened. That girl is my property, and I mean to have what's mine. No one is anyone's property, Alex's voice hardened. And if I ever hear you refer to Miss Mitchell that way again, our next conversation won't be so civilized. There was a tense silence, then the sound of retreating footsteps and horses moving away. Still, Cassandra remained frozen in place, afraid to move until she heard the trapdoor open and saw Alex's face appear in the opening. They're gone, he said, extending a hand to help her up. For now. Emerging from the cellar, Cassandra found Martha already putting the house back in order, her movements brisk with suppressed anger. The nerve of that man, she muttered, coming onto our land with his threats and his pet marshal. Marshal Davis is just doing his job, Alex said wearily. The writ was legal, even if the contract behind it isn't. Cassandra placed the shotgun carefully on the table. He'll be back, won't he? Likely, Alex confirmed. Blackwood's not one to give up easily, especially when his pride is involved. And he's made this very public now. His reputation would suffer if he can't recover what he claims is his. What do we do? Cassandra asked, looking between Alex and Martha. Alex's expression was resolute. We have 2 options. Either you leave the territory entirely, head to California, or maybe north to Colorado, or I accept your proposal, she finished softly. He nodded. As my wife, Blackwood's contract would be void. He could bluster all he wants, but the law would be on our side. Martha busied herself with straightening the kitchen, giving them a semblance of privacy. If I agree, Cassandra said carefully, I want to be clear about the terms. Alex raised an eyebrow. Terms? Yes, she squared her shoulders, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. If we marry, it won't be just on paper. I won't be your employee or your ward. I'll be your wife in every sense or not at all. Color rose in his cheeks, but his gaze remained steady. Are you certain that's what you want? I don't want a marriage of convenience, Alex, she said, using his given name deliberately. I want a true partnership, and if you can't offer that, then I'd rather take my chances elsewhere. For a moment, he seemed at a loss for words. Then, to her surprise, a slow smile spread across his face. Cassandra Mitchell, you are the most confounding woman I've ever met. Is that a yes or a no, Mr. Kincaid? He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. It's a yes, 1,000 times yes. From across the kitchen, Martha cleared her throat. Well, if you 2 are done negotiating, we'd best make preparations. That marshal won't keep Blackwood at bay for long. The wedding took place 2 days later in the small church in Sweetwater, the nearest town to the Circle K. The minister was a friend of the Kincaids, who asked few questions about the hasty ceremony. Cassandra wore a simple white dress that had once belonged to Alex's sister, hastily altered by Martha's skilled hands. As they spoke their vows before the modest congregation of ranch hands and a few trusted neighbors, Cassandra searched Alex's face for any sign of regret or obligation. Instead, she found only warmth and a tenderness that made her heart skip. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Alex hesitated for just a moment before drawing her into a gentle kiss that somehow conveyed both restraint and promise. When they parted, his eyes held a question that she answered with a small, private smile. The wedding celebration at the Circle K was a joyous affair, with music from a ranch hand's fiddle and enough food to feed twice their number. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit around the yard, and couples danced beneath the star-strewn sky. "Mrs. Kincaid," Alex murmured as they swayed together to a slow melody. "How does it feel?" "Strange," she admitted. "But good strange." He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest where her cheek rested. "I never thought I'd marry, especially not like this. Regrets already." She teased, though a flicker of uncertainty passed through her, his arms tightened around her. "Not a single one, though I do regret the circumstances that brought you here." "I don't," she said, surprising herself with the realization. "If my father hadn't gambled away everything, if Blackwood hadn't bought my contract, I never would have met you." As the celebration wound down and guests departed, Cassandra felt a growing nervousness about what would come next. She and Alex had shared barely more than a few kisses, and now they were husband and wife, expected to share a life and a bed. Martha hugged them both before retiring to her room in the east wing of the ranch house. "Your father would be proud," she told Alex softly. "You've found a good woman." Left alone in the main room, an awkward silence fell between them. "I've had your things moved to my room," Alex said finally, "but I can sleep elsewhere if you prefer." Cassandra gathered her courage. "I meant what I said before. I want a real marriage." He studied her face in the lamplight. "Are you certain?" "There's no rush, Cassandra. We have time." "I've never been more certain of anything," she replied, holding out her hand to him. He took it, his calloused palm warm against hers, and led her to what was now their bedroom. The room was simply furnished but comfortable, with a large bed covered in one of Martha's quilts. A small fire burned in the hearth, taking the chill from the desert night air. I haven't." Cassandra faltered, suddenly unsure how to express her inexperience. Alex's expression softened with understanding. "We'll go as slowly as you need," he promised, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "And we can stop at any time." His consideration only made her love him more, a realization that both startled and delighted her. Yes, she loved this man who had rescued her from a life of degradation, who looked at her as if she were precious rather than property. When he kissed her, it was with a tenderness that gradually gave way to deeper passion. His hands, so capable with horses and weapons, were gentle as they helped her with the buttons of her dress. And when they finally came together as husband and wife, it was with a sweetness that brought tears to her eyes. Later, as they lay entwined beneath the quilt, Alex traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "More than all right," she assured him, nestling closer. "I never imagined it could be like this." "Like what?" "So, loving." She blushed at her own boldness. When Blackwood talked about what would happen at the saloon, it sounded so clinical, transactional. Alex's expression darkened momentarily. "That's not love, Cassandra. That's commerce." He kissed her forehead gently. "What we shared was something else entirely." "Yes," she agreed, her eyes growing heavy with contented exhaustion. "Something wonderful." As she drifted toward sleep in her husband's arms, Cassandra felt truly safe for the first time since her mother's death. Whatever Blackwood might attempt, she was now Alexandra Kincaid, and no contract could change that. The morning brought new confidence as Cassandra moved through the ranch house, helping Martha prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. Her status had changed overnight, no longer a guest or refugee, but the wife of the ranch owner. "You're glowing this morning," Martha observed with a knowing smile. "Marriage suits you." Cassandra blushed, but couldn't suppress her own smile. "I never expected to find happiness like this." "My son is a good man," Martha said, her voice warm with maternal pride. "Stubborn as a mule sometimes, but good to his core." "I'm beginning to discover that," Cassandra agreed, thinking of the tenderness Alex had shown her through the night. Their domestic contentment was interrupted by the arrival of a rider, the young son of their nearest neighbor, breathless with urgency. "Mr. Kincaid," the boy called as Alex emerged from the barn. "Pa sent me to warn you. Blackwood's gathered a posse, saying you've kidnapped his property." "They're headed this way." Alex's expression hardened as he lifted the boy down from his horse. "How many?" "6, maybe 7 men," the boy reported. "Pa said they're armed and Blackwood's been drinking and making threats." Alex turned to Cassandra, who had come to the porch. "Get inside. Tell Ma to prepare for trouble." The next hour was a flurry of activity as the ranch was prepared for defense. Ranch hands were positioned strategically, and Martha calmly loaded every firearm in the house. "Take this," she told Cassandra, handing her a small derringer. "It's only got 2 shots, but sometimes that's all you need." Alex joined them in the house, his expression grim. "Blackwood's not interested in negotiation this time. He's out for blood mines specifically." "This is my fault," Cassandra said, guilt washing over her. "I've brought this danger to your home." "No," Alex said firmly, taking her hands in his. "Blackwood and I have history that predates you. He's using your contract as an excuse, but this is about old grudges." "What happened between you?" she asked. Alex exchanged a glance with his mother. 5 years ago, I was working as a deputy marshal in Tucson. Blackwood was running girls there too, but with a sideline in opium. I gathered enough evidence to shut him down and seize his property. He lost everything and had to start over in Silver Creek. He swore revenge, Martha added. Said he'd take everything Alex loved, just as Alex had done to him. Understanding dawned on Cassandra. "That's why you were in Silver Creek that night," Alex nodded. "I'd heard rumors Blackwood was back to his old ways. I was investigating, not just passing through." His expression softened. "Finding you there wasn't part of the plan, but I can't regret it." The sound of approaching riders interrupted their conversation. Alex moved to the window, his hand resting on his revolver. "They're here," he announced. "Cassandra, stay inside with Ma. No matter what happens, don't come out until it's safe." "Alex," she began, fear clutching at her heart. He turned back, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I should have said it before now, but I love you, Cassandra Kincaid." Before she could respond, he was gone, striding out to meet the approaching threat. From the window, Cassandra watched as Blackwood and his men reined in before the house. The saloon owner looked disheveled, his usual immaculate appearance replaced by wild eyes and a day's growth of beard. "Kincaid," he bellowed. "Bring out my property." Alex stood on the porch, flanked by 4 ranch hands, all armed. "There's nothing here that belongs to you, Blackwood. Turn around and leave while you still can." Blackwood laughed, an ugly sound. "I've got a legal contract for the Mitchell girl, and now I hear you've tried to circumvent it with a shotgun wedding. That won't stand in court." "The marriage is legal and binding," Alex replied evenly. "Any claim you had is null and void. Ask your pet marshal if you don't believe me." "Marshal Davis isn't here today," Blackwood sneered. "Seems he had business elsewhere. Convenient, isn't it?" Martha moved to stand beside Cassandra at the window. "That man's spoiling for blood," she murmured. "He didn't come to talk." As if confirming her assessment, Blackwood drew his revolver. "I'm taking what's mine, Kincaid, one way or another." What happened next unfolded with nightmarish speed. Blackwood fired, the shot going wide. Alex dove for cover as the ranch hands returned fire. Blackwood's men scattered, using the wagons and water troughs for protection as a full-fledged gun battle erupted. "We need to help," Cassandra said, moving toward the door. Martha caught her arm. "Alex knows what he's doing. We'll only distract him if we go out there." A cry of pain drew their attention back to the window. One of the ranch hands was down, clutching his leg. Another of Blackwood's men lay motionless beside a wagon. The shooting paused briefly as both sides reloaded. In that moment of relative quiet, Cassandra made a decision that would alter the course of everything. Blackwood, she called, stepping onto the porch despite Martha's attempt to stop her. "This is between you and me. Let's end it now." All eyes turned to her. Alex's expression was one of horror and desperation. "Cassandra, get back inside," she ignored him, focusing on Blackwood, who had emerged from behind a water trough, his revolver still in hand. "Well, well," he drawled. "The merchandise speaks. Come here, girl. Your year of service hasn't even begun." "I'm not your property," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the yard. "I never was. The contract you made with my father was illegal and immoral." "The law says different," Blackwood countered, taking a step toward her. "The law recognizes that I am now Mrs. Alexander Kincaid," she replied, holding up her left hand where a simple gold band gleamed. "Any claim you thought you had ended the moment I said my vows." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You think a hurried wedding can erase a legal debt?" "I paid good money for you, girl." "And that's where you're wrong," came a new voice from the edge of the property. All heads turned to see a dust-covered rider approaching Marshal Davis, accompanied by 2 deputies and, to Cassandra's shock, her father. "What's the meaning of this, Davis?" Blackwood demanded as the lawman drew closer. The marshal dismounted, his expression grim. "Gerald Blackwood, I'm placing you under arrest for fraud, coercion, and operating an illegal establishment." "What?" Blackwood sputtered. "You can't. I have rights." "You have the right to a fair trial," Davis agreed, "which is more than you gave the women you've been trafficking." He turned to Jeremiah Mitchell, who looked haggard and ashamed. "Mr. Mitchell, is this the man who coerced you into signing over your daughter's contract?" Cassandra's father nodded, unable to meet her gaze. "He threatened to kill us both if I didn't sign. Said he'd make it look like a robbery gone wrong." "That's a lie," Blackwood shouted, raising his gun toward Jeremiah. The shot that followed came not from Blackwood's weapon but from Alex's. Blackwood howled in pain as the bullet struck his hand, sending his revolver spinning into the dust. Within minutes, Blackwood and his remaining men were disarmed and in custody. Marshal Davis approached Cassandra and Alex on the porch. "Mrs. Kincaid," he acknowledged with a nod. "Your father came to my office yesterday with a full confession about the circumstances of your contract. Combined with evidence we've gathered from other victims of Blackwood's operations, it was enough for Judge Taylor to issue arrest warrants." "Thank you, Marshal," Alex said, his arm protectively around Cassandra's waist. Davis tipped his hat. "Just doing my job, though I admit I'm relieved to find a solution that upholds both justice and the law." He glanced at their wedding rings. "Congratulations, by the way. Married life suits you both." As the lawmen departed with their prisoners, Jeremiah Mitchell lingered awkwardly at the edge of the property. "Cassie," he called hesitantly. "Can I speak with you?" Alex tensed beside her. "You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to." She squeezed his hand. "I need to hear what he has to say." Her father looked older than his 50 years as she approached him, his shoulders stooped with the weight of his actions. "I don't expect forgiveness," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "What I did was unforgivable. Why did you come forward now?" She asked, keeping a distance between them, "When I sobered up and realized what I'd done." He shook his head. "I couldn't live with it. I went to the marshal, told him everything. It doesn't make up for selling my own daughter, but I hoped it might help keep you safe." Cassandra studied the man who had once been her protector, now broken by his own weaknesses. "I can't forgive you yet," she said honestly, "but I'm grateful you told the truth." He nodded, accepting her response. "You look happy here, settled." "I am," she confirmed, glancing back at Alex, who watched them vigilantly from the porch. "I found something I never expected." "Good." Jeremiah cleared his throat. "I'm leaving the territory, heading to California to stay with your Aunt Sarah, trying to make a fresh start." "I wish you well," Cassandra said, surprised to find she meant it. Despite everything, he was still her father, and a small part of her hoped he might find redemption. As he mounted his horse, he looked back at her one last time. "You look like your mother," he said softly. "She would be proud of the woman you've become." With that, he rode away, a solitary figure against the vast desert landscape. Alex came to stand beside her as she watched her father disappear into the distance. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I think I will be," she answered, leaning into his strength. "It's strange, a month ago, I thought my life was over when he sold my contract. Now I can't imagine being anywhere but here." He turned her to face him, his expression serious. "Did you mean what you said to Blackwood, about being Mrs. Alexander Kincaid?" "Every word," she assured him. "Though there is one thing I need to know." "Anything?" She touched his face gently. "Before you went out to face Blackwood, you said you loved me. Did you mean that, or was it just because you thought you might not come back?" His smile was slow and warm as he covered her hand with his own. "Cassandra Kincaid, I have loved you since the moment you stood in Blackwood's saloon with defiance in your eyes while serving whiskey. I just didn't know how to tell you without making you feel obligated or trapped. And now?" She asked, her heart full. "Now I'll tell you every day for the rest of our lives," he promised, drawing her close. "You're my treasure, Cassandra, not my burden, never my burden." As he kissed her beneath the vast Arizona sky, Cassandra knew she had found not just safety, but a love that transformed her from property to partner, from commodity to cherished wife. Whatever the future held, they would face it together on the land they both now called home. 5 years later, the Circle K Ranch had flourished under the joint stewardship of Alex and Cassandra Kincaid. The modest operation had expanded to include prime grazing land to the south, and a successful horse breeding program that Cassandra had developed with an intuitive understanding of bloodlines and training. Their family had grown as well. 3-year-old James, named for Alex's father, toddled after his grandfather's old cattle dog with determined steps. And in the cradle near the fireplace, 2-month-old Elizabeth Martha Kincaid slept peacefully, her tiny features a perfect blend of her parents. Martha, now in her 60s but still spry, had gradually turned over household management to Cassandra, while focusing on her true passion, the medicinal garden that supplied remedies to neighboring ranches and the growing town of Sweetwater. The ranch house itself had been expanded, with a new wing added to accommodate their growing family and the occasional visits from Alex's sister and her children from California. On this particular evening, as the setting sun painted the desert in gold and crimson, Alex and Cassandra sat on the porch swing, watching James attempt to teach the patient dog a new trick. "Letter came from your father today," Alex mentioned, his arm comfortable around her shoulders. "Sounds like his carpentry business in San Francisco is doing well." Cassandra nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "I'm glad. His last visit was better. James adores him." The relationship with her father had been slowly mending over the years. After 2 years of correspondence, Jeremiah had visited the ranch, sober and humbled, bearing handcrafted toys for his grandson and a lifetime of apologies for his daughter. While the past could never be erased, they had found a way forward based on who they were now, rather than who they had been. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Cassandra asked, leaning her head against Alex's shoulder. "If you hadn't been in Silver Creek that night," he was quiet for a moment, his fingers absently stroking her arm. "Sometimes. But then I look at what we've built together, and I can only be grateful for whatever twist of fate brought you into my life." She smiled, thinking of the frightened young woman she had been, sold to settle a debt, and rescued by a stranger who became the center of her world. "From property to partner," she mused, "it's quite a journey." "You were never property," Alex corrected gently. "Not to me. From the moment I saw you, you were a treasure I never dreamed I'd be fortunate enough to call my own." As James ran to them, demanding to be lifted onto the swing between them, Cassandra felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was her legacy, not the shame of being sold like property, but the triumph of finding love and building a family on her own terms. The Circle K wasn't just a ranch. It was a testament to what could grow when a person was valued not for their utility or price, but for the uniqueness of their spirit and the capacity of their heart. As darkness settled over the desert and the first stars appeared in the velvet sky, the Kincaid family gathered in the warm light of their home free, loved, and treasured beyond measure.